That's one of the things that tweet.
Hi, Lewis.
Well, Lewis will be able to answer those hard questions. If you ask him, makes them really fast answer. So,
they might assign.
but I can make my way through most of this anyhow.
There's a lot of different ways things can be done. So I'm not sure.
NAS in some ways goes towards what Neil was talking about. If you're sitting there trying to sync these different devices, the NAS would be one way of getting there. You sync through the NAS, you know, is if you have your files and stuff there. So, what is the NAS? Network attached storage. Typically, it's a little box that has a small headless server in it that just has some hard drives connected in it, and can be in typically some sort of form of RAID. As it says here, usually Linux based, and connected either. Most of them I've seen are wired, but I haven't seen a whole lot of them. So it's got the wired or wireless, and it just connects directly into your network. And all that little server's doing is just sitting out there ready to share. Now, it can be a variety of ways of sharing. I don't know really any of these particular ones. I've seen on some of the lists where they're talking about the Thecus, the NAS4 free, and the free NAS. I'm not actually familiar with these particular manufacturers myself. The only ones I've really played with are quite old now.
The free NAS and NAS free, they're not manufacturers, they're just custom Linux distributions specific to being to setting up your Linux server as a NAS device.
Okay.
So if you just have some junk hardware and you want to set it up as a NAS, free NAS, NAS for free are two of the options that you could download that are, I mean, you can just do it with any Linux distro, but those are geared specifically towards that.
Okay. All right. So now that this is about to get into stuff way beyond what I can tell you anything about. I can tell you it's talking about RAID, and I can tell you about 3 types, and it goes. He's got so many more RAID types in here I didn't even know existed until I was reading through this. So. But what is RAID? It's a redundant array of inexpensive disks. Basically, you take in, if you have just one disk, it goes down. You lost everything on it. The RAID's trying to, typically at least, is trying to give you the way of having some redundancy to keep from losing data. 2 or more physical drives acting as a single logical volume. It can be mirrored or distributed and is usually fault tolerant. I've never actually played with RAID 0 with the data striping. Can't survive failure of either disk, which means you don't have the redundancy. Basically, it's taking 2 drives, or more than half, 2 drives, we'll say, and looking at one big drive to the system. At least that's the closest I can tell you. I've never played with RAID 0.
The RAID 0 is designed for speed.
It has none of the overhead of mirroring or the loss of disk space required for the redundancy. So it's a faster way to combine multiple disks.
I've got some RAID 1 stuff going where you're mirroring. It's got 2, so you take 2 drives and have them look exactly alike. It's very good for if one of them goes down, you can slot another drive in there, mirrored across, and you have data redundancy.
I was wondering, I have one of those sitting under my desk, and I always wondered, how would I ever know if one of them went down? Does it,
Well,
I should tell you.
does it send you an email or what?
Well, a lot of them, actually, a lot of them will be set up where it can send you an email. Some of them might have a light on there telling you that the drive's bad.
So
you
you
may
wanna
hear a
watch
clunk,
it,
we're
clunk,
going to that
clunk,
desk.
clunk. You have the clunk, 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 clunk. And you know,
That's the smoke out.
Smoke?
Smoke test, right?
But I don't know, actually, I don't think RAID 1 is actually failover. I think if it fails, it'll stop working.
And then you go in and...
What happens is then you can go and power it up or whatever, log into it, however you're gonna do it, and you can say, take the other drive in, tell it to sync, stuff like
Right.
that, so it's like a continuous backup, but it's not necessarily, I don't believe RAID 0 or RAID 1 is an actual failover. So I don't believe it will default back to the
So
zero.
if one goes down, they both, it's like Christmas tree lights here. So,
What it is in theory, if the one device goes bad and is not recoverable, then the mirror is your recovery mechanism. So you put a new drive in there and you sync it back.
Okay.
And you get your data back. It's not a failover. It's like a hot backup.
okay, thanks.
down until you replace it. Now, RAID 5 and the RAID 6, those are fairly similar technologies. RAID 5 requires a minimum of 3 disks. You can survive the loss of one. Basically, though, it's taking those multiple drives, making it look like one, but it keeps some of the data on multiple drives, so that if you lose one, the other drives can rebuild the one that's torn up, that's been lost. And RAID 6 just gives you the ability to lose 2 drives instead of 1, but requires another drive in the system. I've got a system at work where I've got, 6 drives. I think it's 6 drives I've got in RAID 5 configuration. So it's taking each of them 136 gig, and I've got about 500 gig that I then was able to go in and put a OS2 virtual machine on there using most of that 500 gig. And that way, if one of the drives goes out, I can, hopefully recover from it. Most of my problems, though, what I've found is that most of my problems come when checkdisk decides to run. It says, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this file. Oh, this one, you don't need this one either. Which just doesn't help me for it. Now we're getting to the range I don't really know anything about. But this one here seems, fairly. Actually, most of them I can kind of figure out what they're doing. But RAID 10 is 1 plus 0, so you got a RAID 0 of RAID 1 drives. And RAID 5 of 0. So again, I don't know, I am not as, once you get into these, I haven't really played with these. But it's just they're just building on the earlier technologies. Alright. This one I know nothing about.
Just a bunch of discs. That's what it is.
Yeah. But, as far as
Speak for itself.
yeah. Alright, file system configuration, considerations. Okay. Most of the NAS systems are not going to use JFS. They may or may not be able to use capable of FAT32, but they'll use EXT. Some of them may have support of JFS, but a lot of the Linux distros have taken that out. You got to go in there and find ones that, say, okay, I want one that has JFS. And most of them being Linux based, they don't necessarily have the JFS into them from what I've seen. I don't know about the NAS in particular, but a lot of the just your home routers have the capability of plugging in a USB, but none of them can handle JFS. So I've never actually done a test of things. All my external drives are JFS loaded. This is talking about those then being able to handle the extended attributes. So if you're backing up from your ECS to your NAS, if you need extended attributes, you either got to make sure you have a file system on there that can handle it, and the distro can turn on those extended attributes, or you're going to have to zip it, and then we actually have some things in there. And JFS is a good one that, that has that, but a lot of the Linux distros anymore don't handle the JFS.
You can usually, most of the Linux distros, so you can install the JFS support. Right. Stick it on if it's not already there.
Yeah, so
Well, that's if you're doing something probably like FreeNAS or whatever, but if
Yeah.
you're buying a NAS in a box from Best Buy or something, you're probably not going to be able to go in there and reformat the drives. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And they probably did ext3 or 4.
Yep.
In the old days, you might want to do HPF. If you had a OS2 server, use HPFS.
Yeah.
Get all the goodies from that.
If you have OS2 server.
Now,
Yeah, right. That's what I said.
like it says here, even if EA support is available in the file system, the kernel doesn't necessarily have it compiled here. If it's compiled, even if it's compiled in there, the Samba server it's using may not be have it turned on. So you've got, there are several considerations you have to, take in there. And EA support is, for my own usage, I mean, my desktop has to have it. It's a nicety because Mozilla, when it downloads a file, will put into EAs where I downloaded it from so I can go back and look at that, but it's just a nicety. There are some people, though, that use it for, like, in their image files, and it puts the thumbnails in those EAs. And if you're trying to pull the whole file across the network, it's a lot bigger than that little thumbnail EA to see what's on those. But depending on your usage, you may not even care about the EAs. Something like those image files, if you've got hundreds and hundreds of files, you probably like those thumbnails in there. If you just got the files that you're trying to keep backed up, you may not care. Alright. Samba came from the SMB SIFs, SMB being IBM's version of it, SIFs being Microsoft's. I mean, most of us know the Samba at this point. Alright. Samba makes Linux servers, pairs Windows servers. I think we know that. Some of the shares, directories. So basically, the Samba on the NAS is no different from the Samba on a regular Linux box than what Windows portrays to your system, on the network. What your OS2 Samba is doing, really not any different than Peer in a lot of ways. It's just more functional. Peer at this point. And it usually gives you a GUI. Often those are done through a browser. All right. To turn on EA support equals yes. That's in the smb.conf file. It's stored in the database, and then this, I have to tell you, I don't know exactly what that's doing. Other file transfer options, a lot of the Sambas will also, the NAS will have FTP, maybe rsync, or you can upload them through a browser. So you go in there, log in with your browser, and upload the file. Now then, FTP, I like FTP myself because I put the servers on my systems and I transfer them around. So I like FTP. It's simple, fast. But if you're going to have to deal with EAs, you have to zip them. because FTP will not transfer your EAs. You have to do something, or there's other, you can use EA browser stuff and split them out, util split them out, but zip them. That's the whole thing. And you can use net drive to assign a drive letter then, with the FTP plugin. And so you can sit there and just file transfer just like you would on your hard drive, just over to a drive letter. Now rsync I don't know as much about, but it'll sit there and sync, basically mirroring what's in one location over to another location, and then when it's do the rsync the way to see if there's something that needs to be restored. May not be. It is available on our client side because Steve made sure that it was available on our side, but EA support may not be available on that NAS. Not all of them necessarily have it, but I figure at this point, a large percentage of them probably do have the ability to do the file upload through the browser. And like I said, that's you have to check that, but that's going to be a lot slower because it's single files. But if you're after just wanting to get one file backed up, that's not necessarily a bad way to do it. All right. Select configure based on security of data and not performance alone. Basically, if you're just looking at the performance, and get this thing open up to the world, you have data, loss considerations, or not. I shouldn't say loss, somebody else's gain. But also security data, in this case, security of the data, so not lost if you have a hard drive failure. Select quality of the drives for the unit. If even if you're back, even though they're mirroring each other, hard drives today, I tell you what, we go through more hard drives now that these are not the same kind of drive, these 2.5-inch drives are not the same as 3.5 drives, but we go through so many of these drives just constantly failing. And a brand new machine comes in, new hard drive, and the hard drive's bad. So you got to look at who you're getting your hard drives from, making sure that when you put those both in there, that you don't have them both going out. And even if you got them RAID 1, the exact mirror, if both of them are dead, you still are in good shape.
What are good drives? Ones that don't fail?
Ones that don't fail.
Ones with a better warranty.
Yeah.
Typically, you're looking for one,
Western Digital Blacks or red.
But the problem is I can't necessarily tell you, because one time you'll get, for a while one of them will be really good, and then all of a sudden you buy the next ones and if you got several of them that are failing. You go out there and do some, listen, check with people, and people say, oh yeah, these are really good, and then all of a sudden you're seeing consistently these are reported good, and all of a sudden you see consistently they're reported, failures. So unfortunately, there's not necessarily a straight up answer to that. That I have anyway.
If they change the manufacturing process.
They've changed the manufacturing process, and that change. They could be going to have somebody, they may have somebody else that's actually doing it, and they're sticking their label on it, and they've changed who it is that's doing it.
Well, they never do that.
No, never. Now, he's saying ask about the file system and the Exadder. I'm actually, you're going to have be buying that device from somebody that actually knows what they're talking about.
Best Buy.
So
It's got a seal on it.
that's it. If you're asking that question, it means you're going to have to be going to somebody that actually, to buy that thing actually knows that.
Not Walmart.
Yeah, you're not going to Walmart, I tell you. And again, same thing about asking about the ability to configure it. And the thing is for these, I mean, you may be having, instead of going and asking the person you're trying to buy it from, you may be asking on different forums. You may not be able to even find anybody anymore that can sell you this stuff that they can answer your questions.
And that's not as obvious as it might seem. I bought some devices for work one time, assuming that I'd be able to transfer stuff to it in a variety of ways. And it could do FTP and it could do Samba. And for no particular reason at all, it could not do SCP. Just cuz. So, you know, if you're using it, particularly if you're using it as a target for multiple devices, as multiple operating systems, there might be better ways to send them, but that answer may not be the same for all machines. So having multiple ways, services being offered by it is very useful. But some of them, especially if you're just going and buying one off the shelf at Best Buy or whatever, they're primarily designed to be window shares. I mean, that's their primary function.
Now this one here is talking about, I don't know how many have been following this with the bash issues, but bash turned out they had some really bad security.
Really bad holes.
You find out these things are maintained by one guy after work, you know. Bash.
And the problem is that if you've got a NAS out there that happens to have bash in it, and they're not doing any updates, you've got that old version of bash, you know, and you're just, you know. So that's why he's bringing up the frequency of OS updates. I mean, I've seen, you know, my router doesn't have bash on it, but if my router had bash on it, they're not doing updates on that router anymore. I couldn't do it. And if you got a same thing's going to happen with the NAS. If it's not being updated, it's not getting that fixed for the
And the same thing for these, you know, like home use devices. They're not intended to be upgraded. They're intended to be thrown away.
Yep.
So.
This is actually the one I was thinking of when I was talking about the exposing your data out to the internet. It's just, this one I was thinking of, is you can put this thing out there and they're set up where they'll let this thing talk out to the internet. I mean, it's just tell your router to, you know, send the traffic over there. And as soon as you do it, you know, this thing here has not got the security necessarily of Fort Knox in it. You know, it's and
Yeah, it's an oversized floppy drive.
yeah.
Make a good password.
My simple share got updated.
Well, and actually that's ironic. It's sometimes just, that's another place where you see weirdness is, I've run across these where you actually can't put a complex password on it. You get 8 characters, numbers and letters. That's it.
Why would you want more than that?
Again, a Linux-based system, why would they have that limitation on it? It was not expected.
No, well, why does BNC only allow 7 characters? I mean, you can type as many as you want. It uses 7. I mean,
That's actually really old Unix.
all right. Again, don't expect vendor support after a warranty. You know, after the warranty is expired. I mean, you're lucky if you necessarily get vendor support during the warranty. So
You don't expect it before.
Well, yeah, and I would say I would expect the warranty to be like disk replacement, not data
Yeah.
recovery.
yeah.
We should announce that.
OS2 Samba support is limited and can be quirky at times. It's doing a lot better than it used to, but if you go out there and listen, I mean, I can sit there and do transfers, you know, for hours and not have any problems. Other times it'll just crash after, you know, a much shorter period of time. But it eventually, everybody seems, at least for the client side, seems to have, you know, issues. Now the server side, which is really not what this is talking about here, but just because, you know, it's talking about the quirkiness, and the Samba support on the client side is well, still a little, quirky. I found that, there's a lot of different versions available right now with a lot of different versions of support files available for them. And getting the right combination makes it a lot more stable. Still, it can still crash, but it makes it a lot more stable. The server side, I was running a server that gets about, it gets hundreds of hits a day. I don't remember, I couldn't tell you exactly, but it may be in the thousands of hits every day. It's just transferring a couple of files around on it, small, tiny text files is all it's really doing, but it's getting hit just constantly. And it ran for 2 years without any problems, and all of a sudden it crashed, and just crashed. It wouldn't, you'd launch it up and it just crashed again. And I ended up compiling a new version of where they had some fixes out, with some updates in SVN. Compiled that up, got that running, ran fine. Sylvan put some more updates in there, and I built that one. It crashed like the other one, so I put it back. I went back to back to the one that was working. But the things that he did, that he'd updated, should not have affected, to have had the same crash I was having before. It'd sit there, you'd get those hits, you'd launch it up, and then you'd see 100% CPU for a while, and then just kind of crash. And where it should have just kept on with the 100% CPU until it was done processing all the requests, and then drop back off. But our Samba is still a work in progress. All right, this is who you want to talk to if you have more info.
Just a suggestion I would make, if you're actually interested in a NAS for backup sort of things and recovery and making sure you don't lose data as opposed to just a temporary dumping ground, I would suggest when you get the box very quickly, you copy a bunch of stuff over there, pull a drive out, and try to put another one back in. And see if you can, in fact, synchronize it. Not all of these work the same. They're not all necessarily just pop a new drive in and wait for the magic to happen. And even if it is, a lot of times there's a considerable amount of time while it resynchronizes that you really don't want to be messing with it. I've worked with some older servers and stuff like that, and on several of them, I was never, ever able to recover a bad drive based on the mirroring and RAID. I have managed to ensure that it was dead, but actually recovering it, because some of these are not as easy or as obvious as you think they should be. You might actually have to jump through some steps. And so if that is your whole point of having it, is that safety, well, if you can't recover it, it wasn't much of an investment. But the other thing is, if that's what you want, then as soon as you get that device, you need to go buy a couple drives. Because on some of them, if you don't have, in some cases, like with a RAID 5, you have sort of a limited time frame. Some of them may have warning, some sort of messaging or log files or LEDs on it. So you may have 4 drives and they're all green. When one of them starts to go bad, it goes amber. Right? That's telling you you've got a limited time to actually shut that down, swap it out, and put a new one in before a second one fails. When the second one fails, then it's gone. And if you're waiting for your order to arrive from Amazon.com, it doesn't really care. It's going to crash. So you pretty much should assume you have a couple of cold drives there ready to go. And depending on what they are, you may want to need to look at those drives, because if they don't match, you can't just, if you got a RAID, you can't necessarily take out a 50 gig drive and put a 100 gig drive in there. And sometimes they're even more sensitive than that. You really need a matching drive to go back in there. Otherwise, they won't synchronize properly. At the very least, that 100 gig drive will act like a 50 gig drive and just ignore, the extra space. And that's one of the things with the mirroring and the RAID and all that sort of stuff that gets into that consideration there, of whether you want that or whether you just want sort of a dumping ground where you can put a bunch of files, like if it's your household internet radio sort of thing, and you have the music backed up someplace else. You just need a nice big fast place to serve it off of. That's when the JBOD or the RAID 0 is better your answer, but you're not really expecting to recover that. So.
If anybody has any real drive failures, give me a call. Because I can handle RAID 3, RAID 5. I can do bare metal recovery on some drives.
I could have used you a few years ago in my Tesla. When I scrapped a couple servers.
Hope we never have to do
Isn't
business.
it always that way, the first time you're ever ready? Alright, so manufacturer forms may be able to answer some of those questions of whether or not it can handle some of the stuff. Some of the things, again, the thing is that these people aren't looking necessarily for ECS compatibility, so the questions that we're wanting answered are not necessarily available in those forms, but some of the stuff may be. Pre-sale support, again, depending on who you're buying from, you know, whether or not you're going to be able to get any answers from them. And the ECS technical list or the ECS ISP list, you know, is got people that can answer some of the questions because, well, Lewis is there, so he can answer some of the questions. All right. And any other questions? Not that I can necessarily answer them, but, you know.
I want to mention, Mark was reminding me that for presenters who haven't already given me their presentations to upload to the Warpstock website, please email me the presentation or somehow send it to me again so I can upload it. Thanks.
Yes.
This isn't a question, it's a statement.
Yes.
I've got an NAS drive. It's not set up for RAID or anything, but it uses NT.
Okay.
And I have no problems going, I got Windows and I got OS2, and no problem backing up and pulling off.
Yeah.
It's one of these, this one's set up to do it 5,000 degrees for X amount of time, and waterproof and everything. But because electrically it goes bad on my own, I lose it all, but most of the stuff is also on my regular hard drives too.
Yeah. Is this one using just the Windows shares, or has it also got FTP? Or
I think you can put FTP on. I didn't do that. I just use the Windows. So I can go from Samba to it, or just the regular OS2 file server to it. And the Mac will also talk to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it occurs to me that these cloud services are actually a better alternative than this stuff.
Well, that depends.
You know?
Yes and no. You know, yes, in some ways, it's more. You're letting somebody else do the backup. You're letting hopefully they're actually doing the backups and stuff. The other side of that though is depends on how paranoid you are. Somebody else has your data. You know,
You mean like the NSA, for
Or like the stuff in your cloud.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's things you can do. You can be backing up there. You can, encrypt, zip them, encrypt them, and that, et cetera. But it depends on how paranoid you are. Because even though it's data that I don't necessarily care that they have, doesn't mean that I want them to have it.
There's also the question of the speed, I have one of these services, and it took days to upload my first batch of the initial upload. And so if you need that stuff back,
Yeah, true. Now, do you have a slow upload link, or is it the service itself?
I thought it was like, and it won't work for Bangkok. When I bought it, I can do it.
Yeah.
But the uploads time out.
Right. Well, that's not an issue for me. But I'm sorry to hear that.